the watchmen.
Exactly, sorry.
Okay, so I posted the notes on Softgov, and I'll add this. This goes with the question I had thought too. That this week, so many people came reach out to me asking like, hey, how do you guys have so much engagement in TC? Like how do you bring people together in a community? How I don't know how did you do this process? How have you been doing? And then I thought of asking you guys, like, if based on the cultural practices we've been developing and on your personal experiences, what's the best advice you would give to someone starting a decentralized community? And then the accountability question we'll put in the mutual accountability criteria that Juan and Zap are presenting today. So we can slide this one there. Who watches Watchmen? So yeah, what would be the best advice you would give to someone starting a community today? And I'll pass to Tamara.
I wasn't expecting that. It's a really great question, and I was thinking of answers because I don't have one on the ready. It's not. I honestly haven't thought about it before, but my knee-jerk reaction is that it would be something similar to starting a company or starting a business or starting, something, an initiative with partners, and that you want to do it with the people who have, you know, who you work well with and who you have a future vision that's shared with. So I think it has a lot to do with, who you walk down the road of life with. And then for the accountability, who watches the people who are watching, who watches the watchers? That's the second question. Yeah, there's something interesting about when everything's visible, everybody's watching. Everybody's watching the watchers and the watchers are watching everybody. So that's going to be my answer for that. And I'll pass to Dergadas.
Well, I'm actively engaged in starting communities, two of them, in fact, right now. So this is a very relevant question to me. Our Spiral Dynamics group is considering sort of DAOifying, and the very first question is, what about governance? So here we are all talking about that, and this is actually the group I asked them to show up in to talk about that and to learn about that, and to look at what we're doing in the Gravity group and all this kind of thing. So yeah, it's a very relevant thing, but I'm a little bit ahead of them as far as, my head's been in that game for a little while. So they're going to try to catch up. But I would say my first advice to the community would be to make sure you understand what it is that you're uniquely oriented on. That is to say, what is the intention, and every single person in that community should be going hell yeah or it's no. The second thing is to make sure that everyone orients on a common language with respect to how to contextualize everything that's going on, how to sort of resolve misunderstandings and create trust simultaneously. And then the third would be to make sure you decide on sort of platforms, and are you doing like a digital community that's digital 100%, or are you looking at kind of the traditional intentional community or some kind of blend of those two. So then you've got like a practical grounding for what it is that you're dealing with. And those three things, I think, kind of form the foundation of that kind of community. I don't know who's gone yet, so can I pass it to Nate? Maybe? Has he talked?
I have not, but I need to be briefed. Apologies for the tardiness.
Hey, Nate. The question is, based on the cultural practices we've been developing and your personal experiences, what's the best advice you would give to someone starting a decentralized community? Plus, who watches The Watchmen?
Oh, well,
Oh,
I
sorry,
watched
I didn't
The
answer that.
Watchmen. Are you talking about the TV show? The first one is a hell of a loaded question, but it's one that I am constantly seeking the answer to. A piece of advice for a decentralized community is, clear past the participation, diversity in thought, and creating a base structure where you have a set of beliefs or a set of values that you're all built around. I think those are the three core things that can set up your constitution, if you will. And if you can establish that, I think you can have a cohesive community that can grow incrementally over time. But that's a very loaded question. So. And I'll pass to someone who hasn't gone.
Santi, do you want to pick it up?
Thank you. I think if I would have to, I think there's a bunch of things that are making this community or have made this community become what it is. But if I had to mention three of them, I would say that probably the amount of time that the initial stewards, not including myself, spent before the official launch was very important, because you guys were building, the thoughts and the structure and the values of the organization. The good welcome that we give everyone and the diversity. Other DAOs, I would say 90% of the people is engineering programmers. And in this community, you find people who's never touched a piece of code, and they are welcome and they feel welcome, and that's great. And finally, and this also has to do with who watches the watchers, is transparency and feedback. I think using the impact towers helps everyone see that this community is transparent. Everything is updated every other week. Everyone gets to see who's contributing, although of course there's differences because there's people who's getting 100% of impact hours and others don't, depending on how much they are engaged on directly on the group, on the organization. But I think transparency is key, because anyone can see what the watchers are doing, just checking at the impact hours and the dedication they are putting, and that's that brings away any doubt that you may have on why is this guy leading and why is this one getting so many impact hours or recognition or whatever. So those would be my advices. Spend as much time as you can just defining the values and welcoming everyone, and that's it. I'll pass it to Mateo.
Hey guys, the first one is a really tough question, but I agree with Santi and many others said, and I'll try to put it like this: is mainly like a clear alignment between the values and the goals of the organization, because when everyone is in the same road, I guess it's easier for everyone to feel good about what they are doing and not obligated or won't feel like apart. Everybody should feel like united within the same goals, sharing the same values. So if a community is starting to grow or considers to start as a DAO or as a commons or whatever, the alignment between those goals and values should be like the first goal to succeed at. And that goes along with who watches the watchers, because if everyone is aligned and have the same ideas and the same goals, they have a shared conviction between what they are doing, I think everyone is by default watching themselves without being like a hierarchy. Everybody is equal, and everybody looks after each other for whatever, if they are doing good or bad. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say. I'll pass it to Juanca.
Well, on the first question, what would I recommend to a person who is creating a decentralized organization right now? I would say, like, reading the book of Governing the Commons is a really good practice, because the 8 principles and the whole book itself make you realize of the importance of the things that are hard to put in an equation, and the importance uh, of the cultural build. And also, I would say that it's really important, what Santi said, that is to put value in the organization before trying to get profit from it. Because, and here I am going to read something that is from the chapter we read today in the book, that Ostrom says, simply following short-term profit maximization in response to the market price for a resource may, in a CPR environment, be exactly the strategy that will destroy the CPR, leaving everyone worse off. So, like, when you try to follow short-term profit maximization, that would be the exact strategy to destroy your CPR. So you need to look it not just to be short-term profiting, but long-term strategic. And on the question on who watches the Watchmen, I think it's very related also to Ostrom 8th principle, that is the nested enterprises. And that is something that we are going to talk about a little bit, Seth and I, in the meeting. That is to use criteria that work well between DAOs, so that our inner criteria are synced with them, and somehow we have like the same language between the nested enterprise. And I will pass to Jake.
Hi. Yeah, this is a huge question. I kind of think about these things a little differently. Like, I mean, Ostrom's great. I'm a big Emma Goldman fan. I know crypto, started when we have DAOs and decentralization. I don't really think like finance is a part of it. Like, I think it's just like this rock that started rolling down a mountain, right? But what really threw the rock down the mountain? Like, we have all of us all over, a deeper purpose for like looking at what we see every day and realizing quite clearly that this is fucked. This isn't anything I want to be a part of. You know, like there's nothing healthy about any of this. So how do we do something different? And I think, you know, that whole rock rolling down the mountain getting bigger is just a part of that. I mean, if you want to be a part of this collective, you know, I think you really have to ask yourself the questions. You know, you shouldn't be asking me. I mean, you know, because this is all our own personal journey. You know, like I think a lot of the bigger questions isn't about finance or any of that. Like, it's just like, why are you here? You know, I think you're here because you want to be here. Like, it's something called you to be a part of this, because this is a rock rolling down the mountain. You know what I mean? I'm probably not saying this very well, but I really do love Emma Goldman. So some things she has said in the time is, the political arena leaves no one an alternative. One must either be a dunce or a rogue. I mean, you don't get a choice. Once you start thinking for yourself, there's nothing else you can do. You have to do something different. So I think, in a way, in a modern times, you know, this is where we are. Like, we're utilizing technology because that's this new age weapon, right? That they weaponize it, and we're trying to do something different with it. So I think it's just like a catalyst of societies and advancement of human population to some extent. I mean, that's getting pretty out there, but I don't really think about it just as like money. I think we collectively, almost like we're getting back to a tribal sense. Like, we're finding each other. Like, DAOs aren't just potential future societies. They're also like this going back to a tribal point and creating a collective community of a like-minded people to do something beneficial, you know? And work with each other and not just take from each other. I think we're abandoning, like we're denying the status quo. We're not being a part of that. We're not doing this anymore, you know? So if you wanted to start a decentralized community, then I'd ask, well, what kind of person are you? And what was the second question?
Who watches the Watchmen?
Oh, yeah, those guys. Damn them. Well, I guess I would just capitalize, like, we are trying to build something, you know, you're trying to create a community of like-minded people. And as an anarchist, and that's only because we don't have any other terms, what are we supposed to call ourselves? I really wish we didn't have to. But you shouldn't need one. I mean, it really, like, I know we need watchmen. I know we need people and transparency, totally moving on. But honestly, if we were doing this the way we should be doing it, that shouldn't really be an issue, because why would I want to do something against someone else? I mean, obviously it's not going to work that well, but that's kind of my thought on it. It's your intentions. Okay. Otherwise, you can send me after the Watchmen. I'll get nasty. All right. Who's next?
Sam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. Well, for the first question, the first thing that came to my mind was the humanness of the commons. I think that, well, I am not sure how other DAOs are, but what it feels special from here is that we put our faces on. So in some way we are, I don't know if the word would be more connected with each other, or like a group of friends. This is a bit different from other things that have been said, especially from Tam, who was talking about starting a company. I think that the point of starting a company is good, because a company has some objectives, some purpose, but it's also something like, from my perspective, to find a social group. It's more like we are here for chatting and learning together and reading books together and building something that has some meaning. And so it's I think that this is thriving in exploiting the social social I don't know the social, my English sometimes fails me. Whatever. It's a very social DAO in the sense of the humans, and then I think that if I had to say just one thing, that will be the one. For the second question, who watches the Watchmen? I didn't mean that there are watchmen. I think that we all are kind of watchmen. But in the conflicts on DAOs, I guess that you have already been exploring that on Softgov, and I don't used to come so much to Discord, so maybe it's something that you have already discussed. What happens sometimes, what I have seen in DAOs is that people who misbehave, they get ostracized by the community. We have seen that in DAOs like, for example, in OneHive, there was a case in which there was a hacker who tried to steal from it was not stealing from the common pool, but it was like a thing that didn't like so much, that the people didn't like so much. So at the end, people, because of the anonymity of everything, there cannot be graduated sanctions. You have to advertise that that person is not responding well. I don't know how to say that. This person is not trustworthy, and because it involves some security issues, and then regarding, even if there are not anonymity, but you see things that you don't like, you have to go against those things, and in some way it can be harmful. Maybe I just would like to add that even if we think that there are no hierarchies in DAOs, normally there is people who has more weight than others in every social group, and when we say that we are an organization, or an horizontal organization, we are missing the point that actually there is a tyranny of structureless, of the structurelessness, in which if we don't have a structure and we don't give the opportunity to people to become what they would like to be, because of whatever it happens in the community, that the structure is already there, but nobody can nobody can question it, because in theory there is no structure, because everything is horizontal. That's a problem, and there is a very cool. I am finishing. There is a very cool reading of Joe Freeman, I think that is the name, or a feminist that talked about that. It's called the tyranny of the structureless, or something like that. I will find it out and post it in the agenda. And I think that it's a good point in order to respond that question. And I am going to pass to Cliff.
Thanks, Sam. Tyranny of structurelessness. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can get these. Okay, who watches the Watchers? I can start with that first. I like what transparency is doing. I really like what the the watchers are themselves. You know, it's the who watches the mirror. Oh, who's looking at the mirror? You know, like it feels like transparency is just trying to be a mirror. And I think that's the best way to go, is this like everyone's kind of watching themselves, and then with transparency, there's this kind of accountability to the fact that there's transparency. Everyone can see if you're not doing well. So everyone can see what you see in the mirror as well. And I like that approach. And the question was like 3 things that you would tell people who are starting decentralized systems or decentralized communities. Is that the question? I get some nods from people on video.
Just what would be the best advice you would give?
Say that again?
What would be the best advice you would give to someone starting a decentralized community?
Okay. So everyone was saying 3 things, so I'll try to also say 3 things, whether that was part of the game or not. Number 1, at least inspired by the TEC, I would say the culture of gratitude is fucking awesome. I love it. I think it's a huge, like probably one of the biggest things that's pushing us through and making us special. I like also what Tam said, or a couple of people said maybe, about nested. I think one said it too, about nested, like principle 8, the nested systems, having these working groups and giving people agency to lead a working group and letting people float between them as needed, but having these this group of leaders within the system has been really powerful. And you know, I'm a big fan. This isn't necessarily, this is part of what I'm bringing to the TEC, or pushing for the TEC, is starting off small in a way, and not and closed. And it's really hard because there's this like radical inclusivity, you know, wanting desire, and I think that there is you have to make sure that you are inclusive, but maybe not radically inclusive. And I say that as a burner, someone who like exudes radical inclusivity. What I found is that's actually not when you're actually going to start the decentralized network and the decentralized economy, it's important that you start with people who are value aligned, and to curate those, like that initial structure by making sure that you've done a good cultural build, you have a mission, a vision, values, and that there's like, maybe everyone can get in, but only some people can be whales, kind of a thing, because you really got to be careful with extractive characters that don't care about your values and mission. It's a tough one, and that's why I want to give it as advice. And I'll pass it to, did Septimus go?
No, thank you, Griff. For me, yeah, one of the most important things here in TC was like I feel very warm since the first time I joined, and that wants to keep being in there and helping people, and also even when we do a small task, like people is saying, "Oh, good job," and stuff like that, and then you have more courage to take like harder tasks, and that's awesome. Yeah, I think those are the most true things I feel at the beginning. And for who watch the watches, I really like also what Tam and Griff say. Especially like we all are transparent on itself, and yeah, we are watching each other, and that's awesome. I don't know who didn't go. Maybe Meta Verde didn't go.
Hey, so of course it occurs to me the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, right? Establishing parameters, I think, is really super important. Like Griff brought up at a meeting last week that about like what Token Engineering Commons is about. It's not about saving the world. It's about creating well-formed tokens, well-formed tools for people to use for engineering tokens. Whereas, you know, some other DAOs might be more focused on other things. Establishing the parameters of what you're doing, I think, is the most important thing. And I have to agree with curating your core starting group to select against extractive tactics, I guess. And as for watching the watchers, like we all know where I stand on accountability. But I think that keeping everything open like we do in the DAOs with which I'm involved, where everything is open source and everything is public and anyone can drop in on a meeting, really, really helps out a lot. I really don't have anything to add to that. I think it's well covered from what I've seen. And I'm looking, I feel like everyone has
I didn't actually get to say the watching the watcher part.
Oh, Durgadus, yeah.
And I do actually have something to say about that. The
Well,
reason why it
please.
actually makes sense, the watching the watcher thing, and the reason why everyone can see that I purchased Durgados.eth on my Ethereum wallet is, even though I might be a little uncomfortable with it at first, it's necessary. Radical transparency is actually part of yoga. And it's also just part of the reality of the universe. We're all not divided. We're all not separate entities. We're all not separate individual people. I don't believe that I'm a person. I don't believe that I'm just a part of consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. So transparency is simply a part of what's necessary to align with the greater reality. And the radical inclusivity that I've mentioned before, you have to include the people even who would disrupt your thing so that you can figure out how to not allow them to disrupt your thing. And so in many ways, we include the shadow elements in thinking about things in terms of yoga, so that we can figure out the skills to set up boundaries and create values that we need for this time in this place and our evolution. So that's why I think who's watching the watcher, we're all watching the watcher, and all these new systems of governance that we're here creating are doing is just aligning with the larger reality at hand. So that's all I have to say about that.
Hey, Livia. I was going to ask you if I could ask a question real quick. I was going to solicit a specific piece of advice. Maybe Griff or Santi can comment on this. I know, Santi, you talked about the early work of the early stewards and how they shaped the decentralized community at the beginning. But as a decentralized community founder, at what point do you let go of your vision and allow the community to really take over? Like, is there like a distinguished point that exists to where you say, oh, this is no longer just mine anymore?
I think it starts in the open as it is transparent, like we're saying. It's always available for everyone to join. And I think I would say, in my opinion, that this turning point is when you don't have the capacity to pay attention in everything anymore. And then either you want it or not, you have to let go, because there's no, it's humanly impossible to grab everything. And then you have to trust the process that everyone is doing their thing with the agency that everyone is building together.
Yeah, I would just say that it's a really tough one, but once the community really cares about it, feels more that number go up isn't the most important thing. If number goes, I would say that the leadership, and hopefully it's not just one person, but the leadership really needs to come in when it feels like the number go up influence the short-term gains, as I think it was one, or maybe it was Santi was saying, when that starts becoming a thing, I think it's one. That's when the CPR gets destroyed, right? Like, that's when it eats itself. So it's more about, like, hopefully the leader isn't there at the beginning, or it's hard. There's always leaders at the beginning, but then at least with the TEC, I'm common stack, you know? So like, sorry, TEC, don't look at me. They're gonna have to figure it out. So at Hatch, at least there won't be one leader. There'll be all these stewards, or all leaders. And yeah, you know, if the TEC starts, you know, I look at One Hive and I'm inspired by One Hive, but at the same time, I'm looking at like some of the times, some of the way the cultural build that's happening in One Hive was like after the fact, and all these number of go up people are in there, and that's what matters to a lot of the chatter, and it's scary, and it doesn't, you know. So for me, as long as the mission and vision and values is really well positioned and understood, then you don't need the leader guy.
Griff Green, the Dan Laramere of Token Engineering.
What you said about the number go up people, that's exactly what I was thinking about with establishing parameters when you start out, because the One Hive is supposed to be about building community and reaching out and helping people, but there's a lot of like, you know, When Moon Lambo people too, but on the other hand, they're also contributing, and it's finding a way to get everybody contributing and trying to kind of nudge more I want the token to go up people toward thinking in terms of community and how that helps.
Yeah, I think the process should be always more important than the leader. Because if the process is there and if people know how to change it and how to work with it, then it will always work, or hopefully. Cool. Wow. That was amazing. Thanks for all the inputs, everyone.
Thanks for those responses, by the way.
Santi did tell me that he would have to run because I think there's a lawyer that just came in the picture, so he was very excited about that. And he was gonna give an update on a proposal that is coming. I don't know, Mateo, if you wanna jump in here.
Yeah, sure. I was talking to him yesterday, and we are planning on doing a proposal this week for establishing and describing the parameters that needs to be decided for the source code to go live finally. So that proposal should be happening sooner than later, before next week, explaining every interaction that the source code will be taking taking as a cred for everyone that is doing it. For example, if you make a commit in GitHub or write a post in Discord, etc., if you like it, etc., there are many interactions that needs to be defined. So we, as a community, need to decide what interactions will have more weight for the cred. So in that proposal, we are trying to do it as a quick and clear summary so everyone can understand it, and we make a vote after that. So that source code implementation can be like a groupal decision, so it's not imposed. So that's it. I think that for next week, we should have like that written down really clearly. Somewhere, I'm not sure where should we make a proposal about a voting for it, so the source code can go live finally.
Okay, Mateo. I saw the source cred just recently, actually. I guess I haven't been too involved in it, and obviously I have a lot of input for GitHub. Should I? What's the best way for me to give you guys some feedback on what would be the most useful measurements for GitHub versus the way it's set up now? Maybe not is optimal. Is not quite optimal for us.
The way that is set up at the moment is the default given by them using their template. Okay. So we didn't choose anything in there. It's just, let's just play around and see how it goes. But if you understand how the values are mixed and considered, if you understand how the alpha relates to the beta and all of that stuff, you can make your proposal in the same link of the instance and then download it. I can teach you how to do that. So if you have a proposal, you can see how that data would change related to the current one. And then you download that file and give it to me. And if we choose, for example, to go like that, I just have to upgrade the instance. But later on, you can DM me and I'll teach you how to do it if you. Oh, she's gone.
What about we make a proposal in the advice process session, and then Tam can add her comments, and everyone can add to what you guys are requesting, and then after that we can move to the forum proposal section.
Yeah, the idea is that in the instance, it's not really clear for anyone to understand how the numbers would work. So the idea of Santi and I is to make that more readable and more okay. I can have an opinion on this, not just alpha and betas and numbers, coefficients, and all that mathematical stuff.
So maybe I'll just take that on. I'll set the parameters that I think make sense, and then send it to you, or open an issue for it and share it with you and Santi in there. Something like that. Sounds okay, Mateo?
Yeah, you can start to do it right now. The idea is that everyone that has a concern do it before we set up a live instance, or the real one. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Mateo, for the updates. And next, I'll pass to Jake for the forum updates. I finished some proposal template updates today, and Jake worked a lot on them too. And yeah, I'll just pass to you, Jake.
All right, can you guys see my screen? Yeah? Okay, I hope so. All right, so this is always probably, the forum's gonna be a time, but we've cleaned up a lot, and I'm gonna go in here to working groups. So this also falls in line with transparency. We need the specific working group leads to come in and actually clarify better on what their individual working groups are. So when I posted this was to help give new people specifically a much more cleaner understanding of what we're doing just in general with the TEC. And that way, if they come and want to contribute, they have a better understanding of what we're doing, and then they can see these working groups. And for instance, I went in here and changed this and gave a more, not too specific, and keep it short, but a much more, a more clear understanding of what the group is for and what they can do to help more specifically. And I'd really appreciate that all the working group leads do this. And also, we would like to, I'm going to also set up in here a subcategory for feedback for people that come in and have something about the working group, whether they have questions or concerns or whatever. And then they can go in there to your specific working group with your subcategory, and they can leave that there. So if you have an interest in the working group and questions, instead of us filling this up, everything will be directed. And then we can have feedback. And then that's also something that Zep and Ivy can draw from too. And then we can, keep the individual working groups on task with the community. If there's a specific, if someone's working group, for instance, tech parameters turned into a thread of concerns about the voting methods that we're doing with token log, for instance, and I'm not answering some, or it's becoming this or that, there's something there for people that actually can see and can audit and can get after me about it. I think personally, I think that's a great idea. That's certainly open up to, conversation. But I think it's cool. And then it helps with the whole overall transparency of the TEC. I don't really have anything else right now, Olivia. Was there something else you wanted to add?
Can I add one thing, Jake? We were thinking on use that place of the forum to put the audits. So everything that's going on the working group should be there and updated. If that's great.
Oh, okay. Good. Then that'll all work together. That's really good.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, next in the agenda, we have the mutual accountability criteria. So last week, I think most of you were here. We talked about mutual accountability methods, and Juan and Zaptimus decided to work on what would be a criteria that we could have as a base for mutual accountability practices. So I'll pass to you, Juan.
Hey, Libby and everyone. The idea that Seb and I was talking about is that they are creating these audit criteria for the working groups, for the transparency of the working groups, and that maybe it would be also good to have that criteria associated to a bigger framework that can be used also for DAO-to-DAO relations. So this weekend, I read this the Medium article, Conceptual Models for DAO-to-DAO relations, and I find it really interesting because it talks about how, like, if we consider each DAO as an entity, we can also kind of have like these international relationships between DAOs, and that can help us to like measure and understand the different the different DAOs and organizations, and to like have some kind of criteria on them to be able to work together. So there are these 5 variables that are transaction cost, information availability, sovereignty, trust level, and rigidity that we want to dig deeper into, so that maybe this audit that CEP is planning can have like a take on these 5 points that can also be expressed or to help in to communicate in this framework. I don't know if you want to say something, Seb, to show the criteria of that you are using.
Maybe I let me open it first. I have it on transparency.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you're proposing a mutual accountability between DAOs? Like how could another DAO hold us accountable?
We were reading that article. I also posted on Softgov the article that Ruben shared on, I don't know in what chat, maybe TC chat, which is I'm looking at Softgov.
It's here in the agenda.
Okay, yeah, I have it. Oh, sorry. And what we were trying to do is implement those criteria. My PC is slow. this, what Juan was saying, transaction cost info, well, more the info availability, sovereignty, trust level, and rigidity, and we were trying to implement those on the criteria checklist. For example, the manifesto, it's info availability, roadmap as well, then contributors is trust level, decision making is sovereignty, impact hours is trust level, and we didn't find any for rigidity. And maybe we could do a round, and not a round, but if someone has some inputs on that we could add, that'd be interesting.
I was thinking about that, and I think that rigidity is good until certain point, because otherwise, if it's too rigid, then it's a little bit fragile. And as we were talking like the week before, that systems should be adaptive. So I don't know how long like rigidity is a contrary of adaptive. I don't know until that point, and it would be really good to keep like studying from this criteria, like how are they measuring this? Because in the chart that Seth showed, they quantify from 0 to 1 on this criteria, but it would be interesting to know how are they quantifying, so that we can also have our own like measurements in this same language.
What is the rigidity would be trying to measure? How easy it is to change rules or norms or something?
It says, ranging from adaptative to immutable, refers to the level of flexibility of a DAO to react and adapt to the occurrences within the system that might require a change to the system rules, such as a DAO protocol upgrade. It reflects the level of active democracy and represents the strength of the feedback loop of how much an individual agent can actually shape the steering of the system. Systems can exhibit strong democracies, have a strong A to I feedback loop, and one end of the spectrum presents institutions more difficult to change, and the other ends of the spectrum are systems that are more adaptive to the stated needs of participants. So I think that we have more or less.
Sorry, Juan. Can you say that the A to I feedback? Can you just? I missed that. What is? Sorry.
Okay. I am not so good in that, so I will just like show what it says. I was reading. I don't like know much about this.
No worries. I don't want to interrupt. I was just really curious.
I will paste the whole paragraph in the Softgov channel.
I think.
So I think
sorry.
that we should be rigid for some things, but also adaptive, and that should be like the scope of our organization, because we should be adaptive to people trying to comment on something and to influence on the collective. But we should also have rigid some kind of core rules, as we are working in the code of conduct and the params and these like things that would be our boundaries of behavior. So it would be like also adaptive and rigid. And how are we going to be able to measure that? in order to have our own audits on these issues.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
This is really
Yeah, go ahead, Libby.
No, I was just gonna say that this is awesome. I love where it's going, how mutual accountability and transparency can become so interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I really like the what Juan said. Like when we try to make rigid things, like and also it's related what Griff said at the beginning, like the values, and that should be rigid, and I mean not adaptative. So I mean we should be following those values all the time. Otherwise, we would be doing another thing, but not this. Yeah, and then on the other side, like the relation should be more adaptative, and I think we are kind of adaptative. I really like that.
I have a question about this. It's fairly meaningful in what I've been thinking about that I wanted to ask in this forum. And it seems related to this. So at the point where so if we're talking about Ostrom, at the point where the local conditions meet the need for, let's say, a regional sort of structural handoff, right? And then at the point where the regional handoff kind of becomes like a national handoff, and at the point where the national handoff becomes like a world sort of thing, each of those points seems to be talked about with respect to Taleb's anti-fragile. But when you flip that around and you take a look at people like Steve Bannon who are using anti-fragile to see that, in fact, those interaction points, and that could be an interaction point from DAO to DAO as well, that because those things are almost like single points of failure, if you're looking at it from a system design sort of standpoint, they can be targeted and disrupted and interfered with, so that you can effectively exclude the feedback from the local and the regional and the national into these larger contexts of conversation. What I'm interested in is what is it that we as DAOs and inter-DAO organizations are doing to ensure that those things are not single points of failure and can be exploited in the way that people like Bannon and Taleb would, for example, use them. But and similarly, I asked Sean when he was giving his presentation about sort of Bitcoin and Ethereum, what is it we're actually doing to prevent an open system from becoming a very proprietary system, as happened, for example, with the World Wide Web and with the internet itself, when all the lines were bought up by huge multinational corporations. So for me, what I've noticed is that this kind of a corporatized orange mentality with its extreme emphasis on strategy can use a thing which is set up to be sort of anti-fragile and flexible to find points of failure within such systems where you almost have to assume a goodwill to proceed forward, to move from the local to the regional to the national to the world levels. And it would be interesting to hear folks in this space talk a little bit about what we're doing to sort of address that fundamental structural problem. From a governance standpoint, of course. Sorry.
I think that this is very related to something that I was reading also in the last chapter of the book club that we are going right now. That is that we use calculations based on one variable, that is like the economic variable, and we exploit too much this calculation over one variable, and we should have like more variables taken into consideration. And I am not finding the paragraph that I wanted to show you, but I am sure that we can continue talking about this in the book club.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was talking about around the reason why I'd like to express my gratitude, not just as a generic singular kind of praise cycle, but to be able to talk about the different 8 forms of wealth so that I could talk about a specific way in which a person has contributed to the wealth of my life. And if you look at that structure, then it would mean that there's also 8 different ways that I can adapt to an interruption with any given flow of wealth across any one of those 8 things too. So it would actually, in many ways, create a kind of redundancy in the system if I'm thinking about things in terms of a broader definition of what it means to be wealthy or grateful or interoperable or any number of other things.
Hey guys, let's continue this discussion in the book club. I think it's related. There's already someone in there, so we can jump in. And thank you so much for all the contributions to